It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Be sure to follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412. We're on everything, so you can find us there. And while you're there, I would say go check out the pinned post, but today was actually the final day to donate for Rock Around the 412. So as of recording this, it is December 11th. And I guess technically, if you get in donations the day we're recording this, you could technically still donate. But Smitty did set a cutoff date of December 11th. So we are recording on the final day of Rocking Around the 412, which has been another incredible year. Smitty and I were just going over like a rough estimate of like the totals and everything for this year. And between all the money and tags raised for the Salvation Army, plus the money that was donated directly to impact families, which, by the way, 26 children from the East Rochester Salvation Army Angel Tree provided Christmas for, and 10 children across 3 different families we were able to provide Christmases for individually as well. And with a grand total of estimated about $6,600 this year raised, which is incredible. Another incredible year of rocking around the 412. Which puts us well over the $30,000 mark for a 6-year total, which is absolutely nuts. We definitely didn't think it was going to be this big 6 years into it. We didn't really know what to expect in year one, and it's just grown and grown, and we want to continue to keep growing that. And but again, this year I just want to thank, and this is off behalf of myself and Smitty as well. I want to thank everybody that got involved, whether you shared a post, whether you donated directly, whether you took a tag for the Salvation Army, any way that you could have helped out. We just sincerely want to thank you for that. We say it all the time. This is our baby. This is what we love to do the most. We look forward to this every single year. We're already going to be looking forward to July when we kick the year 7 off next year after this one's over. But we just want to say from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. And it was another incredible year. So while there's still going to be links for you to check out, I will shout out Haley Wagner and Everything Custom Designs. We got a Facebook and an Etsy link that will still remain in the description of each of these shows. The Rocket Around the 412 GoFundMe link will no longer be in the description just because today, as of recording this, is the final day. And so go check out the links. Obviously, support Haley. She got some customized clothing, and Christmas is still coming up. You can get some customized stockings, customized Santa gift bags, all this sort of stuff from her. But just as far as Rocking Around the 412 goes, you will not see that link again until next July. So just thank you again. Thank you to everybody who donates, everybody who shares. It just means the world to us.
What a bittersweet day that this is, because with as much that goes into it, as much as I've had to do, it starts off in July, but it really doesn't get like hectic for me, I would say, until the beginning of November. But like since then, like everything that goes into it, it's a lot. And, so part of me is like glad that we've gotten to this point, and now we can see, I posted the picture, obviously, at the Salvation Army with Mary Kay, who runs the show over there, and Kaylee and Isla were there too, and dropping the stuff off. And like, that is obviously like the reward of doing this. Another picture today that I put up, of Christy, who dropped a bunch of toys off. I was not expecting that much, by the way. That stuff's going over to the Salvation Army for their playrooms and stuff like that there as well. But she also would go into everybody that you were thanking for their contributions this year as well, because at their brewery they set up a spot for people to just show up and donate toys, or at least $10. And then everybody there is also going to be eligible to win prizes. So they raised some money for us there, and then they got a bunch of toys for the Salvation Army. So thank you to everybody that did that as well. I have their names just because of having to do the drawings and stuff like that, but I don't have them with me right now. As I punch myself in the face, basically. But yeah, this is the time of year where, you're going to start seeing the pictures of the families and stuff. I got 2 of the families coming to pick up their stuff this week. And then there's one more. I'm waiting on a couple more things to get before that. But yeah, really special year. Actually, you mentioned we crossed $30,000 in total. Being that we also crossed 6,000 with this mission, we actually went over $31,000 from this year. So, we'll see how close we can get to $40,000 by next year. But yeah, super thankful for anybody that plays a role in this mission, whatever that role might be. So I will echo Tyler's thank yous and everything like that, and be on the lookout in the coming weeks for more pictures of these families. I don't know if they're all going to wait until Christmas Day to open them or what, but I'm really excited to see those 3 little girls open their gifts and the 2 boys. And then obviously, actually, one of the families, this third one, is actually a repeat. 5 kids. So that somebody has that graduated the year before me. You guys know how old I am, 28. 29-year-old, married into 3 of them. Their biological father passed away, if you guys remember me telling this story last year. So they have all 5 kids all the time. Not obviously the best financial situation. They try their hardest to make it ends meet and stuff, but very happy to be able to help them out at Christmas time as well. So yeah, another successful mission, over $30,000 raised since we started this mission. You mentioned the figure over about 6,600 this year. I still don't have that yet, but knowing that number now, I want to put together a thing like I mentioned last week, how much we've raised in total, like the exact number since 2018 starting the mission, and then like how many families, how many kids we're talking about, and give you guys a rough idea. I promise I will have that next week, because then we know for sure, like, this is nobody else is going to donate after the time of recording this, so be able to do that. Let's get into something not as cheerful, not as merry, that I'm not as thankful for, and that's Pittsburgh Steelers football as of late. When they lost to the Arizona Cardinals, and we talked about that game, I don't know how you were feeling about Thursday's game at that point, but I felt like, man, I don't want to say it was a blessing in disguise, that game against Arizona, but I thought maybe that kick in the teeth would be what they needed to go out on a short week and take care of business and maybe see what they put on tape against Arizona and say, this isn't happening again. It's a continuation. It was the exact opposite, because it looked exactly like Sunday's game. I actually thought the play calling was somehow even worse on Thursday than it was on Sunday. A lot of bad to talk about in this one. Let's just start with the offense, because we know we're going to see the same quarterback on Saturday, and Mitch Trubisky, knowing that Kenny's going to miss another game, Trubisky's going to play in this one again. Man, was he bad, especially in the first half. I agree with Tom's sentiments that he had on Monday, saying that he thought Mitch got better as the game went on. I did think he was okay in the second half. I think if you get that Mitch, you can win with that Mitch. The problem is, man, he could have had 3 interceptions before halftime in this one. And you're having a very different conversation. The Steelers probably aren't even able to get this thing close by the end of it. Weren't able to run the football. Let's keep on talking about Trubisky, because he was also their leading rusher with 30 rushing yards in this one. Nothing clicking for the offense. We thought they might have trouble running the football, maybe not this much trouble, but they couldn't do a thing in the first half. We'll talk about the defense, obviously, because they had their woes for sure in the first half too. But man, from an offensive perspective, when you thought they couldn't get worse than what they put on display on Sunday, they managed to do it in this first half against New England.
They looked awful. And I think we knew that if there was going to be something about the offense that was going to be hampered a little bit going into this game, we knew it was going to be the run game, and that's something that had excelled in the previous weeks leading up to this game. And that's something that we knew was going to happen, because we went over it that the Patriots were 3rd in the NFL in rushing yards allowed, and that was going to be a struggle for the Steelers. And so they needed to improve through the air if they were going to improve the offense. The first half, I mean, it was despicable. The entire thing, it was unwatchable almost. And it just made me so unconfident in this team moving forward as long as Kenny is out. And that's not even to say that Kenny is necessarily far and away what we got from Mitch Trubisky in this game, even when Mitch was playing bad versus whenever he technically, quote unquote, improved in the second half. But I feel like if Kenny Pickett is not the quarterback and Mitch Trubisky is the quarterback for at least the next week or so, we are going to lose football games. This offense is not going to be able to move the ball. We struggle enough to be able to move the ball whenever Kenny's at quarterback. And I have that much little confidence in that offense. But whenever you go to Mitch and you know you're not going to get the same quarterback as Kenny Pickett, and that's not even necessarily saying it's a good thing, that is the problem for me, is I have no confidence in this offense whatsoever. And what hurts even more when you think about this is looking at how the AFC is playing out and how set up for success the Steelers would have been if they would have beat these 2-win teams in back-to-back games.
Even one of them. I think even one of them. Yeah.
Even one of them.
Yeah.
Instead, you've got 6 teams tied at 7-6 in the AFC. You could have been sitting at 8-5, or heck, even 9-4 at one point. It's absolutely ridiculous that we are in this situation right now, and I don't know where the blame goes for this part. You can't blame Matt Canada anymore. So I think it's very clear to me that between Faulkner and between Sullivan, the play calling is just as bad, if not even worse, than it was with Matt Canada. I think there's an argument to say that it's probably even worse than it was with Canada. Canada just was the scapegoat because he was the official OC. He had been there for several years. It was easy to put the blame on him and to want him out. But Steeler fans who miraculously thought that the offense was going to be the exact same, they're not going to implement a new offense. And it just so happens that the guys that are calling the plays are going to be calling it worse than the guy who was calling it beforehand. So I don't think that from a play calling standpoint, you can expect anything to get better. From quarterbacking standpoint, you're definitely not going to get better than Kenny Pickett. You're not going to get the MVP. Yes, the MVP out of Mitch Trubisky. You're not going to get that out of him. I don't see a way that you're going to get solid quarterback play from Mitch Trubisky moving forward. So honestly, the only way the Steelers are going to win football games right now is if they rely on that run game to control the clock, be able to sustain drives with the run game. And basically, Mitch is going to have to be more or less of a game manager at this point and not turn over the ball, not have to make the decisions like he did on that 4th and 2 at the end of the game. 4th and 2, and you throw it a mile. He said I love the memes after the game. That was Uncle Rico's like Mitch Trubisky on 4th and 2. You want to see me? I can throw a football over the mountains or something like that. It's ridiculous.
That was his only attempt in the game that was over 25 air yards, and they waited until 4th and 2 to pull it out.
It's ridiculous. But regardless, that's the way the Steelers, in my eyes, are going to have to win football games down the stretch over these next 4 games. They're going to have to control the clock. They're going to have to ground and pound and run the football and have success in doing that, because I think it was made very clear in these past 2 games, especially in this Thursday night game, if you're not going to be able to have success running the football and Mitch Trubisky is going to continue to be your quarterback, you are not going to be able to move the football. You're not going to be able to sustain offense. That's going to hurt your defense. The defense was also atrocious in this game right out of the gate. I can't even blame what the offense was doing on for the defense's struggles in this game, but just talking about the offense, they are going to continue to struggle and not be able to have success if they cannot run the football and if they don't get better quarterback play, which basically means as long as Kenny Pickett's not out there, they're not going to have good quarterback play. And I don't even think they get good. I don't even think they get good quarterback play. No, they're just not. They're going to turn over the ball. Kenny just doesn't turn over the ball. He doesn't win the game for them, but he doesn't kill them either.
I think it's strictly the turnovers. I think they move the ball just as well or better, honestly, with Mitch in at quarterback. I just think that the turnovers, him shooting himself in the foot multiple times, is what is killing this team. He had 1 interception this game. He had another one that was intercepted but pulled back on a defensive penalty. And then he had another one that was dropped. So very easily could have had 3 picks in this game in the first half. And then I think you do maybe have a conversation about Mason. But the thing there for me is, and this isn't absolving blame from Mitch, the offensive line has not protected well in pass pro. I think they've been pretty decent in run blocking, especially as of late, though I didn't think they were in this one. Kind of expected that New England, the number 3 ranked rush defense, would give them problems. But in pass pro, they haven't been very good. We saw Mitch running for his life a lot on Thursday night. I don't know that Mason is the quarterback that is going to succeed within that offense. I think you can maybe trust him to make fewer mental mistakes, and I think he has the best deep ball out of the quarterback room, but I just don't think it's going to matter, because I think he's just going to be a sitting duck in the pocket behind this offensive line. So I do still think with what they have right now, Mitch is their best option at quarterback. I think that could change on Saturday. I don't expect the leash to be as long. If he goes out there and turns the football over a couple times again in the first half, I think that they pull the cord, and I think that you could see Mason, if that were the case, because he's actually going to be getting some practice reps this week now. On a short week, you didn't really have the ability to do that. Now you got a little bit of an extended window here to get him some work. But I think that this falls on the coaching staff, and I'm including Mike Tomlin in this, because I think for the first time, I've been somebody, obviously, I mean, if you know me, been a huge Tomlin supporter, and this isn't to say that I don't think that he still can be a successful head coach, but I think a lot of this team's failures do need to be put on him. And is he still the guy for the future? I think that depends on how much control he has with the coaching staff. And we might never know the answer to that. But Alan Saunders, who I do my other podcast with, and I were talking about this. And without knowing that, it's hard to say whether Tomlin should be. Like, we know that he's likely going to be retained. But the conversation of should he be, if he went into this season and was completely fine with the way that the coaching staff looked, then he's at fault for sure. With going into the season with Matt Canada, not having like an offensive assistant in terms of a guy that first off, I'll bring up not replacing Brian Flores as well, having somebody in that role, but then having a guy on offense basically in that same type of role, not having somebody that if you did have to make a switch from Matt Canada in season like they did, not having somebody that actually would make sense to put into the role should you make a move like that, and having to promote Eddie Faulkner and Mike Sullivan into those roles. That is failures done before the season started. I don't know that you can blame them once we're at this point now. I think they're trying the best that they can, but they just weren't well equipped to do so. So does that fall on Tomlin? Does he have full reign to do that? Or does that go above him? Is Rooney really restricting, the number of people that can be on the staff, who can be on the staff because of money? How much does that come into play into this equation as well? So it's hard to divvy up blame without knowing that for sure. But yeah, Thursday was like the first time where I know that a lot of people have had conversations about Tomlin for a long time. Thursday was really the first time that I was like willing to entertain those conversations a lot more seriously than I had in the past.
Yeah, I think Tomlin has a lot of blame coming towards him. I definitely do. There's been things, not even just in this game, but just like throughout the season too, where I think that things have stacked up and it kind of got to a breaking point in this game when it comes to Tomlin. And when it comes to replacing the coaches and everything, I wonder, and I was just thinking about this as you were talking, how much of the lack of preparation for a security plan, as far as like what you do whenever you replace a coach like Matt Canada, how much of that do you think has to do with they did not expect to fire him midseason? And that's just not the way the Steelers operate. And so that was probably the last thing on their mind whenever it came to how they were going to prepare the staff for the season, because they probably didn't even think, and they, including whether that's Tomlin, whether that's Rooney, and just they in general, as the entire franchise, did not think that they would actually do it midseason. So whenever it came to the point where it did happen, they weren't prepared. They were not prepared for that, because that's something that they don't do.
Right.
That's something that they haven't done since pre-World War II for the United States. It's been a long time. So yeah. I wonder if that has something to do with how they prepared in this offseason as far as the takeover would go for in-house guys, because they didn't expect that to be the outcome, but it was. And I'm sure Rooney has probably more to do with the staff decisions than a lot of people would probably realize, or a lot of fans would realize, because, and you brought this up a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about Canada being let go, is like, he's the one signing the checks. He's the one paying everybody. So it's not like Tomlin has free reign over who he can retain, who he can keep, who he can get. It all has to be approved by Rooney, because he's the one that is paying for everybody. That's just how it works. Tomlin is their direct boss, but Rooney is the boss of everybody. So I'm sure that Rooney is going to have some input, for better or for worse, on who's on the staff, who doesn't get on the staff, and all that sort of stuff. So I think there's just as much blame on Tomlin as there probably is on Rooney, as there probably is on several guys in that organization. I don't think it's easy to direct it at one person, but as far as in-game situation goes, and what we saw like on Thursday, that you can put more specifically on Tomlin. But as far as the preparation for how they were going to handle coaching staff changes, I think that share is probably more evenly split, if not even more on Rooney, but we'll just never know that answer.
Yeah, I mean, Tomlin's paid very well to be the one to take that blame. Like when Matt Canada was fired and he's standing up there saying it was a decision of his and his only, he can say that, I get it, and he could have strongly wanted to do so. At the end of the day, he still has to get the approval to do so by Art Rooney II in order to make that decision. So while Art might not have been part of the decision, he still ultimately had to be the one to sign off on it. And, speaking of him and decision making, people will talk about the quarterback, and I want to parlay this conversation about Kenny Pickett, and he's hurt right now. Don't want to keep, heaping on him, but Art Rooney II is on record saying that he didn't want to let another Pitt quarterback go the way that they did Dan Marino back in '83. And that's why they took him. So, okay, right there, you're finding out who wanted Kenny Pickett in this room on the Steelers roster. So everybody that's, talked about Kevin Colbert, and I do think Kevin Colbert's drafts the last, basically since 2018, were not very good. I don't think he left them in a great position with his last few drafts. Or Mike Tomlin. I think there's, a lot of people in the process here. But if Art Rooney II was determined to not let a Pitt quarterback slip through their fingers the way that they did Dan Marino, how do you, who else do you blame for if Kenny Pickett continues on this trajectory in another year or so? We're looking for a new quarterback, and Kenny Pickett's either a backup or heck out of the league. Who knows? That ultimately falls on Art Rooney II then, right? I mean, how else can you interpret that statement? I understand there's other people that are part of the process. He's relying on the scouts to say, yes, this pick makes sense. But if he's ultimately the owner and this is the guy that he wanted in this room, that's got to fall on him first and foremost.
It does. It does. It absolutely does. And I didn't know that he said that. I didn't know that was the
Alan and I were actually just talking about that a couple days ago.
Yeah, I had no idea that Rooney said that, as far as he doesn't want to let another Pitt quarterback go between their fingers. But that makes the blame for at least that decision a lot easier, because I'm sure, and just like we were talking about how Tomlin would have to get approval from Rooney. Not that Rooney would necessarily have to get approval from the other guys, because he technically owns the team, so he can just do whatever he wants. But I'm sure that he still got the okay from Colbert and from Tomlin,
yeah, people actually,
or at least some sort of okay. But I don't think that if that's true, then that would be where a lot of your blame goes. Because if you ask me, who would be Tomlin's quarterback in that draft, it would be Justin Fields, or just in general, not in that draft, but in any draft in recent years, where they could have taken a quarterback. Justin Fields is the one that, to me, Tomlin liked the most.
You think they would have pulled the trigger while, in Ben's last season, to have a guy already underneath him?
Yeah, and just seeing the way that Tomlin looked at Justin Fields at his pro day and everything, and the way he interacted with him, that's the quarterback that I would have think that he would have wanted. And so I don't think that as far as the Kenny Pickett thing goes, I'm sure that at least in Kenny Pickett's draft, they did have, and this is something that we talked about whenever it came to it seemed like the lack of scouting for Kenny Pickett, or not necessarily the lack of scouting, but the lack of interest, is that Kenny Pickett was under their nose for the last 4 years before that. They didn't need to go out and do anything because he was next door. And so that's why, as much as it was surprising that it was going to be Pickett, at the same time, it wasn't necessarily surprising in the terms of and if any organization was going to know Pickett the best, it was going to be the Steelers. But as far as who was the one making that choice and making that selection, that's more interesting that it was the owner. So as far as blame goes, I think that if Kenny Pickett doesn't work out, according to what you're saying, that should be mostly on Art Rooney.
Yeah, and that's I'm curious, how quickly would they pull the plug? Because I think Kenny Pickett's the starter in 2024. I'm not going to say anything beyond that, but you do have to wonder, how many other organizations is that not the case? We've seen guys that show more flashes than Kenny has get benched, get replaced, at least for some period. Look at Zach Wilson with the Jets. I mean, that's a number 2 overall pick that has been benched time and time again, brought in a highly priced, I almost said free agent, but Aaron Rodgers was traded for one of the best quarterbacks of all time to replace him. Then due to an injury, he has to go back in there, benched for Tim Boyle. Now he's back in there, played really well on Sunday, almost 300 yards, couple passing touchdowns. But look at the way that they've handled him in New York and Pittsburgh, for better or worse, just giving Kenny, a ton of leash here. How many other guys in a similar scenario, not with Pittsburgh, but somewhere else, aren't even still playing? I know Kenny's hurt right now, but if he's not, he's still on the field. How many other places can you say that definitively Kenny Pickett would be the starter in 2024? I don't think any.
Not many. And I think that part of it too, as far as why he hasn't been replaced, and I get there's a lot of reasons, especially when you're on the Steelers. There's a lot of reasons, and whenever it comes to the track record for the coaching staff, that also at times seems like it goes for the players as well, whether they're playing poorly or well. So I think that from an organizational standpoint, because it is the Steelers, that is going to help, but also it helps when you win too, even though. And obviously they haven't. It's not like they were like winning and leading their division, but like they were winning games, and they hadn't had a losing streak up to this point. And until these last two games, they would win, or they would lose a game and then they'd win a couple. And so up to this point, like whenever you are winning games and you have a winning record and you are sitting at 7-4, it's a lot harder, I feel like, for a coaching staff or for an organization to make a switch at quarterback, because it's like, could we get better quarterback play out of somebody else? Potentially, but we're not turning over the ball, and we're still winning games. So should they not be making a change? Even like it's if it's not broken, don't fix it. I'm not saying it wasn't broken in the slightest, or it wasn't cracking, because obviously you could get better quarterback play, but at the same time, I feel like them winning games also has to play into that decision, along with it just being the Steelers, and that's kind of how they operate too. But yeah, not many organizations would keep a player like that. Like imagine if switch places with Zach and with Kenny. Like I don't know how long Kenny would last as the starting quarterback in New York with the Jets. Even if he's not turning over the ball, if he's not producing, I just don't think that that's going to
with
be
New
the
York
case.
media too, dude. Like
Exactly,
with the numbers he's put up. Yeah, I have a hard time believing that he'd be granted this type of leash pretty much anywhere else. And I think the record that he has as the starting quarterback has masked it. But like, okay, I don't know. I've never been. I almost look at it the same as, and I'm taking in consideration that he oftentimes has played well in the fourth quarter and down the stretch, game-winning drives. I get all of that, but largely just looking at how he's performed, big picture here, I almost equate it to like pitcher wins in baseball. Like that to me, it's a team stat. Like you're giving him a longer leash despite the way that he's played, just because you have a very good defense that is winning you football games. I don't know why those two things should go hand in hand, but I'm sure that they are. I do think that it masks their larger issue, and they're able to fall back on what his record as a starting quarterback has been. I also think that they realize they take blame as an organization for the lack of development that has taken place with him, because it's not all on Kenny. It's not all on Mitch, the way that he's played either. I think that there is a bigger picture issue with the Steelers offense, in the way that the coaching staff that they've surrounded these quarterbacks with. I think that they have the most uninspiring pass game in the entire league, taking into consideration every team. And this is coming from somebody, I know that I'm a Steelers fan, but I do my fair share of watching around the league and watch other teams. I actually, despite having Justin Herbert as their quarterback, I think the Chargers are very close to the Steelers in terms of how uninspiring their passing game is. When, Kellen Moore got a ton of credit for his work in Dallas prior to, I know he was coveted and lands in LA. I have not been impressed with the offense there. And Brandon Staley obviously stinks, but that's not really his side of the football anyway.
And similarly enough, they also have good receivers like the Steelers do. They just don't get any success through the air.
In a high price defense. Yeah. I mean, there's probably a lot of similarities that you can draw there, other than, their head coach is nothing like Mike Tomlin and Brandon Staley. But I look at the offensive staff for the Steelers, and I'm not talking about, obviously Canada's not here anymore. I think Eddie Faulkner's a good position coach. I think he's above his head, at least right now, with the position he's in. Mike Sullivan, to me, Mike Sullivan as the quarterback's coach should have been fired before Matt Canada. Because you talk about Kenny's progress. Who's his quarterback's coach? It's Mike Sullivan.
Yeah.
I understand Canada is also working with him. I wouldn't have come into the season with Matt Canada. I will say that for sure. But if you were firing somebody in season due to the lack of progress you're seeing from your quarterback, Mike Sullivan would have been the guy that I fired before Matt Canada, and I would have just not retained Matt Canada following the season.
You could argue that Pittsburgh should fire both Mike Sullivans before they should have fired Canada. If we're being completely real.
It's a conversation to be had on Thursday. But he also just recently got the backing of his GM. But yeah, I look at this offensive staff. I think they have, in my mind, top to bottom. Not saying that Alfredo Roberts, I think, is a good tight ends coach. Eddie Faulkner's a good running backs coach. Pat Meyer, to me, I don't know. I don't know what to think of him because, like, I thought Broderick Jones played well early and like better than I would have expected early in his career. I would attribute a lot of that. Like, you would like to think Pat Meyer was a big reason for that. Dan Moore is a 4th-round pick that at least has been like a serviceable tackle. Yeah, like I really don't know, but they're not good in pass pro. You wonder how much of that is like his mindset, his kind of more, I don't want to say like laid back approach to blocking. But I don't know, like the pass sets leave a lot to the pass sets leave a lot to be desired. And I just don't think like as a whole, it's been a very good unit. And I don't know that they've been any better than they were last year as a whole. When you brought in Isaac Seumalo, you're paying him and James Daniels pretty well. He spent a 1st-round pick. We mentioned Broderick Jones. Like, I'm not saying that they're the most talented group, but I think they should be better than how they've been, at least again, in pass pro.
And these last 2 weeks, we've seen them progress.
Yeah. Frisman Jackson, wide receivers coach, I think he's gone. I think that's a guarantee that he's gone. I think if I'm looking at this offensive staff, Eddie Faulkner's back. Alfredo Roberts is back. I don't know beyond that. I wouldn't have anybody else back.
I think you need a complete overhaul. They need a new identity when it comes to the offense. And this has been a long time coming, even going back to whenever Big Ben was still here and Randy Fichtner was the offensive coordinator. Ever since that 2019 year where Ben tears his UCL in his elbow and he has to get the Tommy John surgery, and we are dealing with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges going back-to-back as starters. Ever since that year, the Steelers have had no offensive identity. And even if they look like it, they do for like certain stretches over the past 5 seasons, ultimately they don't, and they haven't for those 5 seasons. And I think that it's been masked a lot by them still winning games because of the defense. This is a conversation we have literally year in and year out for the past 5 years, that the defense is the reason that people don't complain about the offense more, is because they're still winning some of these games that they shouldn't. But I think this has been a bigger problem, even going past the current coaching staff for the offense. I think going even back to Fichtner's offense and Big Ben, I still think that they had these problems. But Ben was your quarterback, and he was finishing out his career. So what were you going to do? And so I think that moving forward, they just need a complete overhaul. Like, they need obviously, like, you can keep like a guy or two, but like, you need to bring in guys that are outside of the organization. You need to bring in guys that are going to have new ideas offensively and just completely change the way that you process as an offense. Because from what we've seen, not just this year, not just last year, but literally for the past 5 years, in my opinion, has been poor offensive play. And that starts from not only just the players, but the offensive coaching staff as well. And I just think that the Steelers have lived with it for the 5 years. And part of that is because of the defense they've had and continuation of winning games. I think that is really where the problem is. They just need a new offensive identity.
And what you just said, going back several seasons, there's been a lot of guys in, there's been a lot of guys out. Doesn't that just go to show you, though, that there's a bigger philosophical issue with this team on offense than anything else? Because if you bring this guy in, if you take that guy out, if you bring another guy in, like, if you're just rearranging the furniture ultimately and you're still not getting better results, doesn't that just go to show you, like, okay, maybe it's not just like a personnel thing, maybe it's a philosophical issue within the organization?
Yeah, that's probably true. And that's why I would say, like, as far as new position coaches go, new OC, nobody in-house. Nobody. I want everybody outside of the organization, because I don't want them to have the same Steelers mantra that we've seen from past coaches. Randy Fichtner, after Todd Haley, was an in-house hire. Matt Canada was an in-house hire. And obviously Eddie Faulkner and Mike Sullivan are not, they're like pseudo OCs right now. They're acting OCs because we let go Matt Canada in season, but they're also in-house guys. They're part of the same organization. They're part of the same offense. They've got the same playbook, same mentality. I want completely new blood when it comes to who is coming in to participate in this offense. As far as position coaches that are going to be let go, as far as OC goes, I would love if they would basically take a new approach from an organization. And listen, I think that like Terrell Austin has done well as a defensive coordinator overall, but still, whenever that hire was made, I think you and I were both wanting somebody from outside of the organization, perhaps. But at the end of the day, if Terrell Austin was going to be the guy, then whatever. This, I kind of view the same thing. Except even on a larger scale, because you're not getting any of the performance from the offense like you were the defense. I think you need to bring in somebody outside the organization, because if you bring in somebody from inside the organization, I just named the guys, like you went from Todd Haley to Randy Fichtner to Matt Canada to now you have the acting OCs that are inside the organization. Nothing has really changed in that time frame as far as your offensive success goes. It's just gotten worse and worse and declined. You need to bring in guys from outside of the organization. You need to bring in new ideas offensively.
Yeah, I mean, at least with each one of those occasions, you could sell the idea that one of those guys made sense to be the offensive coordinator. There's not somebody right now on the staff that it makes sense. Like going from Haley to Fichtner made sense because he was Ben's guy, and like Ben wanted him as the OC. Fichtner, Canada, he had been in here for a while. He had been an offensive coordinator. He had been a play caller. We were actually kind of excited about it at the time of the hiring because of all the motion, and what we thought he was going to bring to the offense. There's not somebody that inspires that, even on the surface, like it was with Canada, that there could be better results. So first and foremost, it has to be a guy that has some type of track record in developing quarterbacks. This offseason has to be about getting Kenny Pickett to at least look like an NFL starting quarterback. There's nothing else that matters more than that to the Steelers offseason than finding that guy as an offensive coordinator. There's a couple names that I could throw out there. I don't know if it makes sense to right now, but like Clint Kubiak, to me, makes a ton of sense. Darrell Bevell, who's in Miami with Tua right now. Look at what Tua, and I understand, McDaniels played a role in that. Frank Smith, their offensive coordinator. Bevell's his quarterback coach, though. Mike White's there as well, who looked pretty good with the Jets last year and has had to play a little bit this year. I don't know. I mean, there's certainly guys out there that I think can get Kenny Pickett to play better. I don't know that we're ever talking about like a franchise guy. I don't know that he's shown enough flashes for me to feel that strongly, but I do think that there's a way that Kenny Pickett can be a starting quarterback in this league. It is not with anybody currently on this offensive staff as his guy.
Yeah, and as far as like flashes as an NFL quarterback, this might seem blasphemous. I'm just going to bring it up since we brought him up earlier. Is like, as far as what we've seen from Kenny Pickett goes, I don't know about you, but I would have more confidence rolling out an offense with Zach Wilson right now than I would with Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that that's even.
Putting BYU bias aside, everybody that knows me is personally going to just say, well, you're just saying that because you love Zach Wilson. I do. I want him to succeed. But at the same time, you've seen way more from as far as things that or flashes that you think you can grow on as a player and develop more from Zach Wilson than you've ever seen from Kenny Pickett.
He has, he's had a 300-yard game. He's had a 3-touchdown game. Like you've seen more high-end flashes. You've also seen probably lower lowlights of him too. But like when you draft a guy in the first round and think that he's going to be your guy for a while, I feel like, again, it just goes back to, you got to see that something. You have to see those high-end flashes in order to earn yourself a leash. And I don't know that I've seen enough from Kenny to unequivocally give him a third season like the Steelers undoubtedly are going to in 2024. It's I don't know. Going into 2024 with him as the unquestioned starter, I think is, to me, setting yourself up for the same amount of failure as going into 2023 with Matt Canada as the only potential offensive coordinator for the team.
Then I feel like you just answered my question that I was about to ask, but I was going to ask you specifically, not what you think the organization will do or not what you think the organization should do, but like what you would do as far as a succession plan for Kenny Pickett, or at least a safety net from Kenny Pickett. Would you go into this offseason expecting to draft somebody who might necessarily be looked at as the starting quarterback, but is somebody who is going to be more of a safety net in case you need to take him out?
Yeah, I think they're going to draft a quarterback this year. I think that they have to. I think you need to find a cheaper backup option and like a developmental guy to kind of like the Chris Aluakon pick made no sense because it was in the 7th round. And You were just taking a random flyer on a guy that didn't even end up making the roster. But if they spend like a middle round pick, I look at a guy like Michael Pratt out of Tulane, who I think would be the perfect guy to come in here and be a backup for a season. But I honestly, I really like him. I know I'm higher on him than most, but I really think that he could challenge Kenny for a starting job if they afforded him the opportunity, like a fair shot to do so. Yeah, it goes back to me. They need to create some more competition in that room as opposed to just saying like Kenny's for sure the starter, Mitch is for sure the QB2, Mason's for sure the QB3. I would like to see there be more of a like performance based determination of that as opposed to just like because we spent a first round pick on Kenny, because Mitch is a high priced backup. Like that seems to be the determining factor for the way that they are in the pecking order. So yeah, I think 2024 is certainly a time where they're going to draft a quarterback, maybe just not as high as where I would, but I'm totally fine with Michael Pratt being the guy.
So would you expect like maybe like round 4 or 5 is where they like look for a guy?
Alan brought this up to me because I hadn't even seen this. People do mock drafts super early and stuff. A lot of mock drafts have Michael Pratt as the Steelers pick in round 4. So, I think but he could also be a riser to me. I look at him as a guy that could maybe get into that end of day 2 range. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes somewhere in the same areas like Hendon Hooker did though either, like at 66 or something last year, because he has a clean bill of health, unlike Hendon, and he's not as old. Obviously, he didn't play in the SEC or anything like that. Not a lot of people familiar with Tulane. Actually, JT O'Sullivan, who does the QB school, was doing like a Q&A thing on his YouTube one day, and I popped in and I said, what do you know about Michael Pratt at Tulane? He said nothing. Get me some film on him and I'll watch him. And I was like, really? Like this guy to me, he's kind of been like a darling of, draft Twitter. JT O'Sullivan didn't know anything about him. So he was flying under the radar for quite a bit. I liked his 2023 tape. I think he's been good again in 2023. But I'm excited about what could happen with him as a guy that we know for sure isn't going to go round 1. That could be within striking distance for the Steelers to add him as a little bit of a developmental piece.
I think the team you just played is also a perfect example of why you do draft a quarterback, even if you just drafted one in round 1. Yeah. Bailey Zappi, again, 4th round quarterback who just came in and beat you. And that is something a year after they didn't even wait multiple years. They waited until the next draft to take another quarterback. They went from Mac Jones at 15 in round 1 of 2021's draft to Bailey Zappi was drafted at 137th overall in the 4th round of 2022. I think that's a perfect example of listen, you don't have a lot of competition necessarily behind Mac Jones at that point. You need to bring in another guy who this could be like a safety net, but also could have the opportunity to take over as a starter. And then look, he wins on Thursday night against the Steelers. I think it's a perfect example of what the Steelers are going to need to do this offseason with Kenny Pickett, how they need to treat it. It doesn't matter if Kenny Pickett was your 1st round guy. You need to have a better guy to be able to go to outside of Trubisky and Rudolph moving forward.
And I think this season has been a perfect example of why backup quarterbacks are so important. I mean, look at all the injuries that have taken place around the league, how many quarterbacks have had to play. Look within the division, Jake Browning, Joe Flacco, and look at how good they've looked comparative. That just makes me even more sad about what we've seen from Pittsburgh's quarterback room, not just with Kenny Pickett, but the way Mitch Trubisky has played as well. And I don't know that you drop those guys in this situation, they do better. Like that is the problem to me more than anything else. And that's why I go back to the offensive structure as a whole. And obviously the players are to blame, but I think the coaching staff deserves a ton of blame as well. But yeah, that's a good point. I think that backup quarterbacks, I think you're going to start to see more quarterbacks than we've seen in the past taken in those middle rounds by teams. Like even if you're not drafting one super high, you're drafting one to add to the room in case of these, scenarios. I mean, I know that it's not necessarily super common, but look at Washington when they drafted RG3 in the 1st round. They then take Kirk Cousins in the 4th round of the same draft. Like, are you going to start to see teams spending higher picks on backup quarterbacks than ever before? Or not backup quarterbacks, obviously out of the gate, but on guys that are probably going to be the backup quarterback for their team than ever before, just because of the way that we've seen, availability of starting quarterbacks affected this season. I think it's an interesting conversation.
So going from just this season and looking at who has completed a snap on offense at quarterback. And I say completed a snap because I'm going to include Tyler Huntley, technically, even though he hasn't been the starter. Lamar Jackson's been healthy all year. But just the number of quarterbacks that have taken a snap for the AFC North this season. You got Joe Burrow, Jake Browning, and when the hell did A.J. McCarron take a snap for the Bengals?
He got in just yesterday.
Oh, did he?
They were up by like 2 or 3 possessions. Yeah.
Because I saw A.J. McCarron, and I'm like, wait, he's still in the NFL? That was the first thing on my mind. Okay, so you got 3 for the Bengals. You have 4 for the Browns because you have Deshaun Watson, P.J. Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and Joe Flacco. So we're at 7. And then you have Lamar Jackson and Tyler Huntley for the Ravens. We're at 9. And then you have Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky for the Steelers. 11 quarterbacks have taken a snap in the AFC North this year.
11 quarterbacks across 4 teams have taken a snap. I do like in the quarterback play has probably been as bad as I've seen around the league too. Like I think it's going to be super important to have a capable backup behind you. I think everybody's going to start taking that approach. I think Indy did it really well. You know, pairing a first-round pick in Anthony Richardson with Gardner Minshew for $3 million. Mitch Trubisky's making like 8. Gardner Minshew got $3 million this offseason, and Indianapolis really hasn't missed. They're probably in the same position or better than they thought they were going to be before the year, sitting at 7 and 6 right now. So I don't know. I think a lot of teams are going to start investing more, whether it's, you know, draft capital or money spent in free agency to the back quarterback position, because I think this year has really highlighted how important it is. And that's another thing too about it is like, there's not enough good quarterbacks. Like there's not even 32 good starting quarterbacks, but you got to keep throwing darts at the position for that reason. So while I'm not trying to make it sound as easy as it may be sounding out of my mouth to like add good quarterbacks to your room to also have a good backup, you got to keep taking shots to ensure that you do, because we've seen how many have to play.
I think they have to start viewing it kind of like college does. Just because you have a 5-star quarterback doesn't mean you're going to turn down another 5-star quarterback from look at the portal. So just because you have, like, look at anybody who is anybody in college football, as far as like Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, any of those types of programs. Just because you have a ton of 4- and 5-star players doesn't mean you're going to say, "Nah, I'm good. We don't need those." We're going to take as many as you can get. I think the Steelers and maybe just NFL programs in general should look at, even if we like the guys we have, we need to continue to add the talent to the room in order to have future success and be putting ourselves in the best situation moving forward in case something does happen, or in case we're not performing to the best of our abilities. You need to still have the best talent that you can in that room. It's I was just gonna say we're like over 45 minutes in. We haven't even talked about the defense on Thursday night either.
I know, yeah, and we don't need to spend too. They gave up 3 touchdowns in the first half to Bailey Zappi. You mentioned Bailey Zappi. I don't know that I have a ton more to say about it, like other than the fact that now you're also coming into Saturday's game worried about the health of Highsmith and Watt. Highsmith we saw leave this game. They diagnosed it originally as a neck injury, and he was rolled out of the game while he was still in the medical tent. Like we're sitting there and they still have the blue tent over him, and it pops up on the board that he was rolled out. We're like, all right, well, that's not good. And then Watt left early, got kneed in the helmet, came back in with a different helmet. People were saying just a different visor. It was a completely different helmet though. And there could be a multitude of reasons for that, and I'm not going to get into that conversation about the, medical staff or whatever, but, they were good in the second half, but in that first half, like what, there is no if you would have told me that the Steelers scored 18 points against the Patriots, I would assume they won by 2 possessions in that game. Like that is the Patriots, the 2023 Patriots that entered this game. Like I don't know how.
Also, I feel bad for you and everybody else that took the under.
Yeah,
they oversoared in this game.
Yeah, I had Steelers money line and under, so that one failed me.
Man, that's a rough go.
And
that's why I said a little bit ago that I can't even blame the offensive inefficiency for the defensive struggles in this game, because they happened out of the gate. They literally from the first drive on, and it was just the first half. The second half they
had 90 receiving yards in this game. Yeah. He didn't have more than 53 in any game coming into it. Like Ezekiel Elliott, not in the in running the ball, he still averaged just like 3 yards a carry. But in the passing game, I was like, is this 2016
7 for
again?
72
Like,
and a touchdown.
yeah, like Michael Walker, I think, really got exposed in this one. And again, he's playing more than he should in a role that he shouldn't be in. But he was not good. I thought Landon Roberts was actually great in this one again. I think he's been, kind of the unsung hero for this defense. I don't know where they are without him.
We still don't know how to cover tight ends, by the way.
Yeah, well, a lot of that was Michael Walker was one of the Hunter Henry touchdowns for sure, and the Ezekiel Elliott one. The second Hunter Henry touchdown, I looked like it was I don't know if Minka undercut it too much or what it was. Like that, I can't believe Bailey Zappi hit that throw, by the way, that honey hole shot, because he misses that more often than not. But yeah, definitely not good defense on that one either.
That's
it
was
Mike
him that we haven't seen from Kenny, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really Michael Walker, in my opinion, they were picking on mainly in the first half. The outside corners were good. They gave up 4 catches for 17 yards total in this one. Joey Porter, Patrick Peterson was good again. Patrick Peterson's been good for a month plus, and people just think that he still sucks because of how he looked early in the season. He's played in a different role since then, and he's been really good. I don't know. I think that you can really look at this defense, and they need to do better than they did, obviously. Oh, Cam Hayward had his best game, 2 of the season, I thought. On a short week at his age, 75% of the snaps playing through, still clearly not 100%. Very odd for him to have his best game in that game. You can't give up 21 points in the first half at home to the New England Patriots.
Well, you can't give up 21 points in the first half, and then they proceed to not score for the rest of the game, and you still lose.
Yeah.
I don't know which part's worse. The fact that they didn't let up a point in the second half and they still lost, or the fact that they let up 21 in the first half.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. Very displeased with the defense overall. Obviously, the last couple of weeks, they have to be the backbone of this team. They know that they haven't been up to their standard that they've set for themselves, and their play has kind of said that they're going to. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know that it's going to get better on just because we don't know if they're going to have that edge.
A lot of it is I don't think that quarterbacks have been uncomfortable enough in the last couple of weeks. I don't think Zappi and Kyler were uncomfortable enough, even though they did get to them a couple times. They still got sacks. I just don't think that from a playing and play out basis.
Are they too easy to game plan against? You look at the blueprint that the Texans kind of set up, where it's get the ball out quickly. We know how to slow down this pass rush. The teams around the league know that that's the only thing that you have to do, because they don't have the guys at the second level more than anything else in the middle of the field to be able to cover the middle of the field.
Probably.
Is that what it is?
I mean, probably, because we've talked about it just on the two of us on this show that we can clearly see what the Steelers are trying to do. It's clearly a bend don't break, and we're hoping that our front guys can make you mess up, and whether that's a sack or cause a turnover or whatever. And so whenever you have that mentality as a defense, when you scheme for that, I feel like that's kind of easy. Is as long as you can get past that that mentality from that defense of, okay, they're going to let us bend. They're going to bend a little bit. They're going to give us some stuff in order for us to. They're hoping that we don't make a mistake, or that we make a mistake. If you don't make that mistake, I feel like this defense is very easy to scheme against. This defense thrives off turnovers and sacks, and when they're not getting those in abundance, then I feel like it's pretty easy to play against.
Yeah, I mean, if you're an offense that can get the ball out quick, you're probably going to have success against them. I don't know how. So we know that teams can slow down the pass rush by doing that. How do you slow down an offense from doing that? You got to have guys that can, and Joey Porter can definitely, press and get his hands on you, but that's not enough. You got to have more than one guy that's capable of doing that to make you take your time in the passing game and have to drop back. And, there's a lot to this conversation. We don't have enough time to talk about all of it, but yeah, the defense clearly not good enough either on Thursday night. Can they turn it around on Saturday against the Indianapolis Colts? 2 of the several 7-6. There's 11 teams in the AFC that are 8-5 or 7-6 right now out of the 16 teams in the AFC. And then there's 6 teams that are 7-6. Basically, in my opinion, all competing for 2 playoff spots. Say what you will about if it makes sense or not. I think the Browns, already having 8 wins with the rest of their schedule, are pretty much a lock to make the playoffs at this point. The way that I would have said about the Steelers prior to that Arizona game. type of lock. So can the Steelers right the ship on Saturday against the Indianapolis Colts? How do you see this one going? Give me a bold prediction. Of course, the score. Is there maybe one key matchup that you're looking at?
Honestly, I don't see it going well. And I think that has to do with my just negativity. Maybe I'm being a little pessimistic after these past 2 weeks, but I don't have enough faith in the Steelers. I don't have enough trust in the Steelers right now. And like I said, whether it's Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, like I don't think that they have a great chance of improving offensively either way. But as long as Trubisky is the quarterback, I just don't have the confidence that this offense is going to be able to do enough to win you a game. And part of that is because of the turnovers that Trubisky can cause. But either way, I don't think you're in a great situation. But with Trubisky, I just think you're in a worse one because of those turnovers that he does let up. And so I don't see this going the Steelers' way. I do see the Colts beating them, and it stinks for the Steelers that 3 out of their last 4 games are on the road. And the Colts, outside of they lost to the Bengals, I believe, they won like 4 in a row before this, so they were playing some good football. They were getting some wins, and I just think that they're going to beat the Steelers, especially in Indianapolis. And the Steelers are really going to have to change my mind from play on the field. I don't have enough confidence in just my thought of these players to be able to say that I think they're going to win. Because based off the last 2 weeks, when you play back-to-back 2-win teams and you lose both of them, I just don't have enough confidence in you as a unit, specifically on offense. And then defense, I just think that with some of the questions, like we said, we don't know if Highsmith is going to play. You saw Michael Walker get exposed more in this game. There's still questions about some individual players on defense as well going into this one. I just don't like it for the Steelers. It doesn't. This doesn't feel good to me. So I'm going to say the Steelers are going to lose this game, and I'm saying they're going to lose 21-10. I don't think that they're going to move the ball that well. I think that they're still going to be able to struggle offensively. Even though you are playing a worse defense on the Colts than you did with the Patriots, I have little to no confidence whatsoever.
What about a bold prediction? Or is that the bold prediction?
I mean, if you want that to be the bold prediction, that they just flat out lose, then that's it. Bold prediction, I'll say Mitch Trubisky has 3+ turnovers.
Oh boy. Okay. The one thing I will say about this is we're talking about Mitch Trubisky's turnovers. However, now he's played more, but also this is a lot. Gardner Minshew does have 11 passing touchdowns, but he has 8 interceptions. He's also fumbled the ball 8 times. He's lost 8 of those. So 11 touchdowns to 13 turnovers for Gardner Minshew. I think this is a better matchup for the Steelers defense than the last couple of quarterbacks because of his willingness to hold on to the football for a little bit too long. He doesn't get the ball out quick. He does turn the football over. Now, I don't think that this is necessarily going to be much of a factor. Like, we're having this conversation without knowing what the status of Watt and Highsmith are going to be. If one or both of them are both out, probably a different conversation. I agree with you that the Colts win this one. If you have at least one of those guys or both those guys, I do think that has the ability to be the turning, what swings this matchup the other way for Pittsburgh because of their ability to create some turnovers. That is what's going to happen in this game. The Steelers are going to have to win the turnover battle one way or another, regardless of who's on the field for their defense. So I look at the numbers for Indianapolis as well. You mentioned, a worse defense. That is definitely the case. 25th in terms of yards allowed, 377 yards a game. Passing, they're middle of the pack. It's 17, 226 a game. 26th against the run, 131 a game. Points, they're 29th, 25.2 points per game. Third down percentage, middle of the pack, 37.4%, which is tied for 13th in the league. So it is going to be a good ground game. I think that we've seen games like this in the past. I think the Steelers are going to pull this one out. I think that they pull it out. I will say, going to be a little bit weird here. We're going to go 19-13. The Steelers win. My bold prediction is going to be that both Najee Harris and Jalen Warren score touchdowns. Both of them, not just one.
I don't want to dampen the mood either, but since I'm on a roll anyway of being negative, I might as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the Colts are averaging giving up 25.2 points per game. The Steelers have eclipsed 25 points this season one time, and it was against the Browns in week 2. They scored 26 points.
Yeah. Well, I'm not picking to go over 25 points.
Oh, no. I know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like,
yeah.
Even if an offense is letting up points, it's still the Steelers' problem that they have to score the points.
How about the Colts being the number 8 scoring offense, 24.2 points per game?
Man, imagine if Anthony Richardson was still in for them and he didn't get hurt. Wonder what that offense could look like.
Yeah, I mean they're okay across the board. Like they're pretty middle of the pack. 17th in yards, 17th in passing yards, 15th in rushing yards, 24th though third down percentage. So the only thing the Steelers do better offensively is rushing yards by about 2 yards. Defensively, they're better in everything besides passing yards allowed. So I don't know. Very intrigued by this matchup. A battle of 7 and 6s. Whoever wins this one going to be looking better for the playoffs. I would say with the Steelers still having to go to Seattle and Baltimore to end, I wouldn't say that they're looking good, but they'll be definitely looking better if they can get past Indy. They sit in the driver's seat for a playoff spot right now. So by that, you could say the Steelers control their own destiny. It's not necessarily looking great because of the teams on their schedule, but they do. If they take care of their business,
maybe if they win against the Colts, then maybe you get another win at home against the Bengals and you get a season sweep of the Bengals. Who would have guessed that?
Then you probably get a 1-1 in the last 2. Yeah.
And then you'll probably win one of the last 2. And say you lose in Seattle, Baltimore in that week 18, they might not be playing people because they will have like the number 1 spot.
That's why everybody was like rooting for them to lose to the Rams yesterday. I'm like, Ravens win out. I hope the Ravens win out and they have like a 2-game lead for the number 1 seed by week 18.
Yeah, I would much rather face Tyler Huntley than Lamar Jackson. Despite Lamar Jackson's stats against the Steelers in his career, I'd still rather face Huntley. And I mean, I'm sure that Lamar's not going to be the only one that would be sitting if they were sitting guys.
Yeah. It's like, but he's only thrown more than 1 pass 6 times against the Steelers. They are 2-4, but I think only like 2 of those games are in Baltimore. Like it's a very small sample size. I know that the Steelers have limited him well on like a per game basis. It's not enough for me to get on board with everybody else talking about like the way that they dominate against him.
I'll say in Pittsburgh they definitely dominate him, but yeah, the sample size is too small. Like he's really started like 6 true games against the Steelers. Meanwhile, with like the Browns and Bengals, he started like 11 or 12.
Yeah, the bigger issue has been his health more than anything for me. So,
yeah, well, continue to win out Baltimore, and maybe you still won there because they're sitting guys. So I mean, you could look at obviously 7-6 sucks right now, but you could look at finishing like 10-7 or something like that. So I think that would get them into the playoffs at this point, especially for how tight things are.
I think you got to go 3-1. I think you got to get to 10 wins. I don't think 9's going to do it with everybody that's 7-6 right now. Yeah, I don't see a path at 9-8 to get in. So I think you got to go 10-7 to get in. But anything else?
Nope, that's it. It's weird that we're playing on a Saturday again. We started like
the following week.
Yeah, and the following week, back-to-back Saturday games. I'm not complaining though.
Both
gives me something to do on Saturday since college football's gone.
Yeah, there you go. You still got a good slate, but this Saturday actually there's 3 games, so nice little slate on Saturday for football, which will be cool. Yeah. But yeah, check out Everything Custom Designs. The Etsy and Facebook links are both down below for our friend Haley Wagner's small business. Get you a custom stocking, custom Christmas bag, custom clothing, anything like that. Can't get any hats though. Does not have the machine capable to do so or something like that. And one last big thank you for everybody. I say one last, I'm still gonna bring it up the next couple of weeks. So but the donations, by the time you guys are watching or listening to this, probably have stopped depending on how quickly you watch or listen to the show when it gets put out. Maybe got an opportunity before midnight here on 12/11/2023 to get a donation in, but this is the last day that we can accept donations for year 6 of Rocking Around the 412. Crossed $6,000 this year, also crossed $31,000 raised since we started the mission in 2018. 36 different kids between the East Rochester Salvation Army Angel Tree and also 3 local families that we're helping out are going to have their Christmases made thanks to the donations from all of you. So from Tyler, from myself, we can't thank you enough for being a part of that, whatever way that was, donating yourself, sharing, getting eyes on it. We had a couple people that, were drop off spots for toys, whether it's Keats Barbershop or friend Christy, who just dropped off the stuff today. So thank you to anybody that plays a role in this thing. It's been awesome to see what it's turned into. And let's keep growing. It'll be like Tyler mentioned, it'll be July before we know it, and I'll be doing this thing all over again. And I can't wait. My basement's like pretty much clear now, by the way. So this is fantastic. Got a second TV down here now, by the way. My man cave is back. No more presents down here right now. So
this might be a little bullish, but let's make it a goal by year 10 or through 10 years. Let's cross $50,000. We can set that as a goal.
Okay. Yeah. So 4 years to raise 19-ish thousand. Yeah, I think we'd do that because if we're raising 5,000, yeah, we'll do that. That's gonna happen. I thought you were gonna say like 100. I thought you were saying 100,000 or something like that. I was like,
no. We're not
maybe
stuffing
pump the brakes. I appreciate the
No, $50,000 for 10 years. I think that would be awesome.
Desire. Yeah, I agree. So, I don't want to say be on the lookout because we are far away from that, but be on the lookout for all the pictures and videos and stuff of the families that you all made their Christmas happen for. So thanks again, Tyler, for Smitty. This has been the Around the 412 Steelers show. You can go watch another video that's popping up right now or come back on Thursday for the Penguin show. Till then, we'll see you.